Brandon Miracle!
John Cartwright.
How are you today?
Sprightly.
Sprightly. I'm glad you're sprightly. Over the last couple of days, news outlets have been picking up on a tweet from Beat-em-Ups, who has addressed concern over whether the Switch is distinct enough marketing-wise from the Switch 2, because the boxes are out there in retail stores now, and there's a side-by-side shot of a Switch 1 and a Switch 2, and they are both just kind of red boxes with very similar imagery. So maybe there's something to warrant here, but what do you think? What's your gut say? Is this going to confuse anybody?
Well, it's interesting that this topic has come to light because I made a video about this very scenario.
Before it was announced.
Before it was announced. And I actually have mixed opinions about this. The reason for that is because I am a victim of a parent who couldn't tell the difference between product A and product B. And not just on one occasion, but multiple times over the course of my life.
What's the example? Like how distinct are these two products that you're thinking of right now?
Well, the first one that comes to mind, actually, well, there's two, but the first one that comes to mind, Dragon Ball Z, Budokai Tenkaichi 2 and 3. My mother came back with 2 when I asked for 3, and they don't even look similar outside of the number.
I can see how you'd just say that title at a parent, though, and they'd be like, that's so many words.
The thing, though, is like my mom specifically used to have me like scribble down the title of what I was looking for, like on a piece of paper that she would take with her when she left. When you have the words on a paper in front of you and you still buy the wrong product, this is my mom we're talking about, but like I know that it's not exclusive to my situation.
In your scenario, though, you're talking different box arts,
yes,
different games. With Switch 1 and Switch 2, I feel like with all of this discourse, I think the Wii U just broke people. It just broke people's brains, man. Like, people think that any kind of similar naming convention is just gonna confuse everybody. And when it came to Wii U, there were so many factors beyond just the name that made people confused. It's because they marketed it like a controller. You know, it seemed like an accessory. So if you caught any of that trailer stuff, maybe you didn't even realize it was a console. And when it came to the launch titles, like it launched with a game that looked like Mario Wii, New Super Mario Brothers Wii. Different game, looked the same though. So there's so many factors as to why some people were confused about whether Wii U was a new thing or not. But the biggest factor of all of that is people didn't want a Wii U. Like Wii U was just undesirable to the masses, whereas Switch 2 already seems to be very desirable, just selling out everywhere. And that's the big thing.
It was even undesirable to Nintendo fans to some degree.
Yeah. Whereas with Switch 2, I think you can directly compare it to like PlayStation 2. And that's another thing. No one has ever been confused about what the next PlayStation is. Like this one has a 4. Is it the new one? Like, of course it is.
I think people are blowing this way out of proportion. When I made my video, this was coming from life experience. And I think that the steps that they've taken with Switch 2 are more than enough for the average consumer. I even called the red boxes, like, that happened, and I think it was a smart call. I perused r/GameStop on Reddit over the last couple days, and a lot of employees and managers have chimed in on this specific topic. I would defer to them. And apparently this is a very common issue for them. I don't think it's going to be like something that's catastrophic or it's going to doom Nintendo. This is just going to be like edge cases that's going to frustrate a retail employee for a few hours.
Yeah.
But it's not going to affect the life of the console. We've seen the response to Switch 2 in terms of pre-orders and just the absolute fervor. There's consoles in the wild now. People are like insane over the system in a way that I don't even remember Switch 1 being like. I think the console's going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, Switch 1 was kind of a new concept, so it had something to prove, whereas this is just following up on what we already know. But I think that big 2 on the box is going to do enough. But also, I don't know about how it really works in America, but in the UK at least, I think most console sales are done online now. They don't really just walk into a shop, pick up a box from a shelf and bring it to the counter. So I can't see that many scenarios where someone's like they miss the big 2 and just pick up a Switch 1 accidentally. And if that happens, they'll probably be like, why is this so cheap? It's meant to be this amount. I can see so few scenarios where it actually goes through unless it's like a grandparent buying one.
It's interesting that you say that, because literally the last time I went to a GameStop was to pre-order my Switch 2, and there was a pair of grandparents in line with me. And they like pulled one of the employees aside once it was their turn to buy. And they stayed there for like 20 minutes, like talking to the employee, trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
So like, it does happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it can happen.
And, bless their hearts when a grandkid or kid asks, an elder who isn't interested in this kind of stuff to buy something for them. It can be difficult. Like, if someone asked me to buy a car with certain specifications, I'd probably have to ask questions.
But this is true of, like, literally any product that has something else in its line, right? Like, your Dragon Ball example. But if I were to say, like, I want a PSP, how likely is it that someone might accidentally get me a PS Vita? It's a handheld PlayStation. Like, this is just kind of an unavoidable scenario. But but when you look at smartphones too, I did a little comparison yesterday on Bluesky. I think it's like the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14 or something. Their boxes are like identical. Like it's just like a different kind of line on the screen or something like that. But otherwise, they look like the exact same phone. But I've not really heard a scenario where people are like, which one's the new iPhone? Because you know which one you're getting because you've done some research. It's an expensive thing. It's not something you just get on a whim.
I think there are 2 levels like to this conversation, right? There is the genuine concern, like that someone's going to make a mistake and it's going to cause a momentary headache for a few people, whatever. And then there is whether or not the console will fail or succeed because of this. And they are 2 completely different things. They are not related in any way.
Well, the latter feels more like concern trolling rather than actual concern. It's like, this is going to be another Wii U. Like, no, I don't think they actually believe that. They just kind of want it to be another Wii U.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who gives it like some real critical thinking will be able to like separate the 2 and be like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Man.
I think the majority of like enthusiast gamers right now are probably within our age bracket. And 9 times out of 10, someone our age is going to go into a store or go online and know exactly what they want.
Yeah. They've definitely gone a long way to kind of brand things as a new system. Like, I prefer the little icon in the corner of Switch 1 boxes, but the Switch 2 banner, it's indistinguishable. Or the opposite, actually. The Switch 2 banner, it's completely distinguishable, It's a big line across the box. You can't mistake that for a Switch 1 box.
Yeah. I mean, them being like the same size as Switch 1 games might be momentarily difficult, like, for someone if they're like if they're showing spine side, which GameStop will do a lot with their used games.
Yeah.
But even those are different. Like the art wraps around. There's still a 2 there. It's not particularly large.
The same as PS3 to PS4 to PS5. Same size boxes, different numbers.
And then Switch 2 still has that extra advantage of all of the plastic being red.
Yeah.
So I really don't see it being that much of an issue. I more expect some parents to come home with a game that's for Switch 2 when their kid has a Switch 1 rather than, something more substantial. And that's simple as, and rectifying that as simple as just returning it and, getting your money back.
Right. I'm sure that happened with Game Boy Advance, where people had a Game Boy Color, but their mum bought them a Game Boy Advance. And on the
It
back
especially
of those boxes,
happened between Game Boy and Game Boy Color.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. On the back of boxes for Game Boy Color, and GBA games, there's like a little graph on the back, like ticking what this works with. I don't think Switch 2 does that, but at least with Switch 2 editions, like if you buy Breath of the Wild for Switch 2 or Pokemon for Switch 2, that cartridge still works in a Switch 1. It just doesn't boot up the expansion pack or the upgrade
That
pack.
actually leads directly into my second example. When I was in elementary school and the Nintendo DS had just come out, I had been saving like birthday money, Christmas money, every little piece of money I could get my hands on, I was saving because I wanted to buy a Nintendo DS really bad. And when it finally came time to, my mom apparently had talked to an employee at Walmart. She worked at Walmart at the time. Whoever was in the electronics department there somehow convinced her the DS couldn't play Game Boy games.
Oh.
And I think what happened is he meant it doesn't play Game Boy games, but it does play Game Boy Advance games. And I think my mom got confused, and she was like, "No, you should buy a Game Boy Advance SP instead." And she just wouldn't let me buy a DS because she thought she was right. I ended up having to wait like an extra year or two before I got my DS because of that. Which was infuriating as a kid.
Like in the interim?
I did get a GBA SP, but I had a Game Boy player on my GameCube at home, so like it didn't do much for me.
Oh man.
But yeah, like again, these are just edge cases. I don't think it's going to affect the situation or the sales situation for Switch 2. No. That's bozo thinking.
Well, I think to look at all the systems right now, like PS5 ultra clear, Switch 2 I think is ultra clear. I think the least clear is actually Xbox Series X, Series S.
Yeah.
You look at those names and you're kind of like, what does that mean? They're two different names. Are they the same system? Is Series the name of the console? Which yes, it is, but. I remember when that was revealed, I was a bit like...
And right before the Series systems, it was Xbox One X and Xbox One S.
Right. So you have games... Like, if you're buying a game for someone who has an Xbox One X, do you get them a Series X game? Like, that can genuinely be quite confusing. I can understand that, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's more likely to happen for games rather than the actual console. But even then, I don't think it's going to happen as much as it would have with, Xbox games or Game Boy games back in the day.
No.
I think Nintendo has done a reasonably good job in differentiating the two consoles and the two sets of software.
Yeah, I think so too. That's probably about all we can say on this for now. People have some opinions on this. Maybe there are some scenarios where this is going to confuse someone. But I think you take a step back and look at the broader picture.
Yeah.
I really don't think this is going to have much, if any, impact on anything.
I'm sure there will be news stories about this for the first couple of months, just in the same way that there was news stories about the 3D and the 3DS giving people headaches. I still don't believe that was true.
No one's ever had a headache. Not true.
Not to the scale at which they were trying to claim.
Yeah.
I think this is just some sensationalism. For the sake of sensationalism.
But if 3DS did give you a headache, we do believe you, by the way. We're not saying...
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying it never happened. Let me be very clear.
All right, on that note, thank you for watching, everybody, and thank you, live audience, for joining in the conversation in that box below. If you want to join them, you can for just $5 a month over on our Patreon. And you can join all our live recordings, including the console rankings, which happen every week, maybe more than once a week in the coming span, because we don't quite have a schedule fixed at the moment. So keep an eye on our Discord, check out Patreon, and thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I'm sorry if you had headaches.